Hello everyone, I'm Wes Shofity. I'm an open source database and HPC strategist for North America. And what I want to cover today are some new innovations that we're bringing to the market in regards to changes in our architecture, and also to touch on Kinetica, which is a very exciting new solution that we're bringing to market. We've had a tremendous amount of interest from virtually all the top Fortune 100 companies. And the reason it's so compelling is, I would say, it creates options and abilities to do things in new and innovative ways that weren't achievable beforehand. And Jeff will get into that a little bit more, and he'll be doing a live demo for you guys as well. So just to touch on a couple things. One exciting point that I really want to touch on is that our IBM Power servers have the newest, latest, and greatest NVLink GPUs, and we're the first company to bring NVLink into our servers and integrate it throughout. And I'll get into some details on what that really means for you here in just a minute. Also, and Kevin had kind of touched on this, we also have a few other versions of our Power LC model servers. Some of these are better suited for open source database solutions. Some of them, like the Minsky that we just announced, is ideal for solutions like Kinetica that heavily leverage GPUs and GPU acceleration to really bring the horsepower that you need to do streaming analytics and things that were otherwise virtually impossible to do based on CPUs. So just touching on this a bit, we're the first company to bring out the new Nvidia Tesla P100s. So there are 4 of these inside of each Minsky server, along with 2 Power CPUs. This particular model is set up to run up to 1 terabyte of RAM, which is pretty considerable. In fact, we have some new announcements coming out next year that will even supersede this, which is really exciting. There's a big change in the market with new technologies being developed around GPU acceleration, and from a cost standpoint, it saves so much money that it makes no sense not to in a lot of environments. Right? You're not going to have the same RAS features that you have with your traditional Power big iron, but for each its own, right? You kind of have to find what's built for purpose. Kevin kind of touched on that earlier. Depending on what you're trying to achieve, what kind of database you're working from, your configurations might vary a bit. We found this to be the best suited for Kinetica. So just to touch on this briefly, our ecosystem is growing. I'm sure you've heard about it in the news. You've heard talk about Google. GPUDB is actually Kinetica's old logo. I'm sure you've heard about a lot of these in some of our marketing and what have you, but the net is that we're expanding this ecosystem, we're continuing to invest in it, and it will continue to grow. So just to touch on a few, most of you guys probably have Hadoop installed, probably have Spark somewhere. Some of these things are not that far off track with things you're trying to achieve today. And Jeff will kind of get into during his demo, walk through how we're able to achieve results doing things a little bit differently than we've done in the past. So I'm going to just kind of skim through this. I mean, the big takeaway here is that we're being asked to do things that we weren't necessarily asked to do in the past. Victor touched on the fact that the one thing that's consistent with being in the IT industry is that change is just constant, right? And so we're starting to have to do new things around big data, analytics, social, mobile, advanced cybersecurity, things that weren't necessarily such a focus area even 5-6 years ago. So again, we have to continue to innovate. I kind of like this quote here, which is that the Uber syndrome, where a competitor comes in with a completely different business model and just flattens you. This is a real threat to a lot of companies. If you can't adapt, you can't change, you're in trouble. And this quote right here regarding 52% of Fortune 500 firms since 2000 are gone. That's real. So one thing that I want to touch on is, what does HPC mean to you, right? So, typically, in the past, customers kind of glaze over when they hear high-performance computing. They think, I'm not a federal, government agency. I'm not a research university. I'm not necessarily doing that. Well, the point that I want to, kind of drive home is that things have changed quite a bit. And if you're hearing people talk about doing advanced business intelligence or streaming analytics or data visualization on a broad scale, things in real time such as fraud detection, logistics, inventory tracking, Internet of Things, those architectures are really based on HPC architecture, right? So the way that you view HPC should change a little bit because it's starting to become part of your infrastructure, whether it be now or in the near future. So speaking of innovation and kind of changing the way that people view things, and Jeff will get into some of the various use cases for different markets and industries, but the net is that IBM is expanding and growing in this particular field. And so how do we do that? Well, it's all based on our architecture, our chip design, and continuing to make advancements and investments into doing things differently than x86 solutions can do today. So one of the big things I wanted to touch on, and this was a recent announcement, is that we launched the Nvidia Tesla P100s. So if you have 4 of these inside of a Minsky box, like this configuration you see here, that emulates almost 15,000 cores. That's a tremendous amount of brute force compute power that you may not have available unless you had some significant investment in large iron. I'm not going to bother to read through this, but this is just some high-level technical stuff over the Nvidia P100s. So, it's not all about the hardware, right? It's like, what's the solution? What do you package together to make a difference, in my ecosystem, within your network and within your infrastructure, and that's why I brought Kinetica here today. So the interesting thing about Kinetica is they were actually born out of a government incubator. And initially, the software was designed to track terrorists in real time. The challenge that the government had was by the time they managed to run the compute on CPUs, using large server farms, by the time that completed, the terrorists were already gone from whatever location they happened to be in. So there wasn't a lot of value. So the gentlemen that, or the founders, I should say, of Kinetica, decided to start experimenting with leveraging GPUs to do that brute force calculation, to take something that would have taken 8 or 9, 10 hours to process down to milliseconds. Very exciting stuff. So we're going to take just a moment to go over a quick video on Kinetica.
Tired of overplaying slow and complex databases? Thanks to GPU acceleration, you no longer need to buy piles of servers and suffer challenging development to achieve speed of thought insights. Kinetica dramatically accelerates your access to data. We provide an in-memory database that helps you ingest, process, and visualize your data freaky fast, allowing quicker data-driven decisions with a fraction of the hardware and development. Speak with a specialist today.
Apologize for the sound. I'm not sure if you guys can hear that or not. So I'll skip through the next video just in case. But the net is, why are we different? How are we doing it different? And how is this going to drive improvements in your infrastructure? And the net is faster cores, multi-threaded processing capabilities, larger caches than anything x86 can bring to the table. And we're already seeing between 2.5x to 5x performance gains right off the bat just by leveraging GPUs for most of the software packages that we've started to test on. And interestingly enough, next year we'll be launching servers codenamed Witherspoon that will actually have NVLink 2, the newest Volta Nvidia GPUs included, some advancements from our friends at Samsung, as well as Mellanox. And we're going to see 4 to 5x performance gains even over what Minsky stats are advertised today, which is absolutely incredible. The advancements are bar none, and that's one thing that we're really proud of. So you say, well, how is it so different, Wes? Well, the difference in our architecture is such that NVLink allows for us to have the GPUs interconnected throughout the platform, right? Whereas with x86, anytime you have a GPU type conversation, it's kind of GPU to GPU, and we have a bottleneck right here. We don't have that problem here within Power because the pipe is significantly larger, and it's only going to continue to get larger as we continue to make more developments. So again, this is just a detailed slide as to what the architecture looks like within these Minsky boxes. I'm going to skip through this video just because I'm concerned about the sound issue. So the net is, here's a quote from Kinetica's CEO regarding the performance results they saw just out of the gate without any optimization work whatsoever. Right? So we're very excited. Kinetica's most performant on Power, which is why we brought them here today. We're very excited about what they do. And keep in mind, they're not necessarily an open source database. It's really more branded as a GPU accelerated database solution. So it's a little bit different than some of the other options that you saw earlier. So what are some of the use cases? We have a handful, and some we can reference in about a month that are very exciting, and there's some that we have today. But just to touch on a few, think about financial services firms that are looking at fraud detection and streaming analytics. Obviously, federal, given that they're born out of the government incubator, there's a lot of federal agencies that continue to use Kinetica. Healthcare, ad tech, insurance for risk modeling. Certainly retail and logistics are two of the biggest, and where we've gotten the most traction, as well as the financial services sector has really taken off very quickly. So this kind of touches on what I just mentioned a little bit. So one, referenceable use case I should touch on is the U.S. Postal Service. So what the U.S. Postal Service started doing with leveraging Kinetica was tracking their fleet of mail carriers, and right out of the gate they saw significant performance improvements, not only in how they do business and reducing their carbon footprint, but also just better managing the resources that they have available and finding ways to do more with less. Also, kind of determining where you had overlap and coverage and where you had some sticking points. There's a very large retailer, some of our best friends based out of Arkansas. I'm sure some of you might do business with them. They had a very exciting use case regarding logistics and tracking their fleet of delivery vehicles, right, to help get produce to a store before it would potentially spoil, or to get product on the shelves in anticipation for a weather event, right? So that could mean you're getting umbrellas and rain boots to a store before it rains, and it's supposed to rain for a week, or maybe it's during the winter season and it's getting rock salt snow shovels to stores before it snows. Things like that, when you have stock out problems. This large retailer estimates that they lose between $2 and $3 billion conservatively, each year related to losses with stockouts and not having the right products in the right place at the right time. So that's where Kinetica came in and really kind of changed the game for them. But keep in mind, a situation like this, the business value makes the cost of the solution seem like a drop in the bucket. Not to mention any of the competitive traditional database solutions would have cost many, 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 many times more in terms of hardware and software, licensing costs than what the Kinetica IBM solution brings to the table. So again, I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. Here's our architecture from last year. Bringing Cappy in was a huge advancement. This year in launching our Minsky servers, bringing in NVLink, the latest Nvidia GPUs. The exciting thing about this is we've sold out of all the first couple batches of servers that came off the assembly line, and that's something that we haven't done in quite a while. So that's getting that kind of momentum coming into the market is very exciting. We're starting to really turn some heads, and so I'm really excited about this product. And going into next year, I kind of mentioned that we're going to have NVLink 2. We're going to have the latest Volta GPUs, and this is where we're seeing potentially 4 to 5x performance gains over what we have today. And what we have today is still 2.5 to 5x over x86 Broadwell. So, that really makes power become a price performer in this scenario, because when you think about how much additional hardware you'd have to buy from Dell or Cisco or whomever to accomplish the same feat, you're going to end up coming out of pocket a significant amount more. So when all things considered, especially for a large install, you don't just have to come up with a justification for not going with power in certain instances. I'm not going to bother to read through this. Kevin kind of already touched on some of the advantages of CAPI attached flash. I think you guys get that. The value is kind of self-evident there. And again, going into the end of this year and going into next year, we're starting to take a look at, how can we go about doing things differently than we've done in the past, and starting to look at GPU accelerated software packages like Kinetica or Blazgraph or what have you. And again, this kind of feeds into deep learning, machine learning, artificial intelligence, things like that, doing a better job of training models to analyze data in real time to get better results for your business. So just to touch on this briefly, if there was a type of technology that you're interested in doing a proof of concept on, just to let you know, we do have testing and benchmark centers located around the country. The two that we primarily leverage here in the U.S. obviously would be Poughkeepsie and Austin. For our purposes here, would probably be the Poughkeepsie Center. So we just dropped off 20 brand new Minsky servers there. So if there is a solution area of interest, please reach out to me. Don't be shy, and I'll work to connect you with the folks that you need to speak with to gain access to some of these machines to do some testing. So again, I kind of touched on this before, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but the net with this slide is that we're continuing to drive innovation, and innovation that we drive helps you to innovate as well, which is important because, as Victor mentioned before, and I'll keep saying it again, change is the only thing that's constant, and IBM's doing a really good job right now of staying ahead of the game. And just to kind of wrap up, anytime you buy one of our HPC solutions, it's tested, it's vetted, it's gone through all the trials and tribulations you can imagine. So what you end up with is a nicely polished solution that's ready fit for exactly what you need to accomplish, right? So you have the option, of course, to scale out by node as opposed to doing typical upgrades, but that gives you some flexibility to just, a variety of different things. So anyway, thank you everyone for your time. I'd like to hand it over to Jeff to come up and do a demo on Kinetica and to teach you guys a little bit more about what it is that they do. Thank you.